This is Biafran National Television and Radio, Bntvr, Voice of the Rising Sun, the official broadcast station of the state of Biafra. Welcome and thank you for joining us for the Rising Sun News. I'm your host, Pointer. Here are the headlines. Defunct ANAMBRA State Governor, Professor CHUKWUMA SOLUDO, cannot enforce peace by summary execution and violence against indigenous Biafrans, declares Major CHUKWUDUM NWAFOR. Military Civil Converge, a path to Biafran freedom. Equal rights to self-determination, national sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity for indigenous Biafran is existing and non-negotiable. Biafran National Guard never ceased fire nor lay down their arms. Now, the details. Major CHUKWUDUM NWAFOR, Provincial Administrator of NWAFOR Province, in a provincial memo from the provincial capital, NWAFOR, has described the summary execution of an unarmed and defenseless male young adult in Oba Town, NWAFOR Province, which occurred on 2nd February 2025, as a proof of the bloodthirstiness and hate against indigenous Biafrans by defunct Anambra State Governor, Professor CHUKWUMA SOLUDO, and his newly recruited vigilant group, Agune Chamber, and their engagement in his Operation Udo Gachi in defunct Anambra State. In a viral video circulating in the internet, the unarmed and defenseless victim, speaking in Igbo language, was seen being molested and brutalized by about 6 armed men clothed in the uniform of the occupying terrorist armed forces Special Force of Nigeria, accusing the victim of being a suspected shooter, supposedly because of the traditional body marks on him, and demanded from the victim the whereabouts of a said Papa Biafra. In the video, even as the young man was professing his innocence, stating he was coming from a nearby stream, he was severely beaten into a comatose state and summarily executed in cold blood. Major CHUKWUDUM stated that the occupying terrorist special force were recruited from a popular ex-militant who has turned into a traditional ruler for the purpose of pursuing and exterminating members of the pro-Biafran group, notably IPOB, while disguising as security agents fighting insecurity in defunct Anambra State. The provincial memo from NWAFOR Province states the collaboration of Professor CHUKWUMA SOLUDO in aiding genocide, massacre, armed aggression, crimes against humanity, and war crimes against indigenous Biafrans, and purposely violating the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, which in its Article 5 and 7 states and guarantees that no one shall be subjected to torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment, and also the equality of all persons before the law without discrimination. The Provincial Administrator of NWAFOR, Major CHUKWUDUM NWAFOR, tasked his personal assistant on statistics and record for an urgent situation report on the atrocities perpetrated by Professor CHUKWUMA SOLUDO's armed terrorist Agune Chamber, declaring its agents and their Operation Udo Gachi as illegitimate and a legitimate target for the Biafran military troops for self-defense, while calling on indigenous Biafrans in NWAFOR province to be alert and avoid unnecessary gathering till further directive is announced. Captain Ovie Johnson, Ughelli Provincial Administrator, has called for commitment to the military-civil converge organized by the Biafran Supreme Military Council of Administration, BSMCA, as the reliable means to eradicate the influence of the occupying terrorist armed forces and government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in all territories of the state of Biafra. Captain Ovie highlighted how the massacre in Okwama, Ughelli South District of Ughelli Province could have been prevented if adequate logistics and provisions were available for the Biafran provincial government of the state of Biafra, and the restored armed forces of the state of Biafra, the Biafran National Guard, BNG. Also, the Ughelli Provincial Administrator reminded all that the death of Pa James Ogworoko and Pa Dennis Okubaye, both elders of Okwama community, who were arbitrarily arrested, tortured, and later murdered in the detention of the occupying terrorist Nigerian army, as another proof of the continuous extrajudicial violence and killings against indigenous Biafrans by the occupying Nigerian state and its agents. Captain Ovie insists that the Biafran military civil converge is a vital opportunity to address threats to lives and properties of indigenous Biafrans in line with Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, while taking concrete steps towards ensuring the demilitarization of lands and territories of Biafra to further promote peace, economic and social progress and development. Equal rights to self-determination, national sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity for indigenous Biafrans is existing and non-negotiable, declares Major Ibekwe Eminike in response to defunct Abia State Governor Alex Chioma Otis' remarks that, I quote, "The Biafran of old cannot happen anymore, but the Biafran of the mind," end of quote. The Provincial Administrator of Umuahia Province, Major Ibekwe Eminike, described the remarks of Dr. Alex Chioma Oti as a spit on the graves of the victims of the 1966 pogrom in northern Nigeria, the Biafran genocide of 1967 to 1970, and also the victims of the numerous massacres of unarmed and defenseless activists and members of pro-Biafran groups, MASOB, Biafran Zionists, IPOB, and others, those murdered in Ngwa High School, National High School, those murdered along Port Harcourt Road for just protesting and demonstrating with flags and nothing else. Major Ibekwe queried Dr. Alex Oti if the support of the occupying government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for the right to self-determination for the Islamic peoples of Palestine and Western Sahara is also of the mind and not a reality. Is it of the mind that the Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, aka Jagaban, was in Saudi Arabia recently for the Islamic Arab Summit, and he openly advocated for the full independence of Palestine from Israel? Is Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, aka Jagaban, stating of the mind? Was he not speaking of the reality while in Saudi Arabia? The Provincial Administrator of Umuahia challenged Dr. Alex Chioma to be more advocative and practical on the absolute respect for the rule of law and responsible leadership. He reminded the defunct Abia State governor of their cowardice and conspiracy in the continuous detention of IPOB leader Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Major Ibekwe cautioned Dr. Alex Chioma to avoid escalation of armed conflict in Umuahia province and its environs by the immediate effective release of every indigenous Biafrans locked up or imprisoned for over 1 month without any legal charge or trial. Those in Abia State CID headquarters, Umuahia, and those in the Nigerian prison in Aforuku. Specifically, recent report received by the Biafran provincial government confirmed that since December 2024, there are people unjustly arrested in Aruchuku district, kept in Abia State CID headquarters, and then transferred to Afaruku prisons. That is the Nigerian prison in Afaruku. Till date, they've not been presented to any court. They've not been given a trial date. They've not been given any charge, but they have been languishing in the prison for no just cause. Major Ibekwe hereby demands for the immediate and effective release of those indigenous Biafrans and others kept without any legal charge or trial for over 1 month in Abia State CID headquarters, Umuahia, and the Nigerian prisons in Afaruku. The defense headquarters of the Biafran National Guard, 2nd Division in Nsukka Province, has described the online publication titled, I quote, "Peace gradually returning to Southeast as Biafran National Guard lays down arms," end of quote, which was posted on March 12, 2025 by a news-bound blog as a misinformation, distortion of facts, and of malicious intention. The reporter of this fake news is a mockery of the journalism profession and surely a gossip blogger whose job is to spread lies in the comfort of his bedroom without proper investigation, observation, and verification on the ground. The Biafran National Guard Defense Headquarters, 2nd Division, Nsukka Province, hereby, for the purpose of record, documentation, and clarification, is telling the entire public to ignore the false news that the Biafran National Guard, BNG, has laid down arms, and should note the following fact. The Biafran Supreme Military Council of Administration, BSMCA, administrators of the Biafran Provincial Government of the State of Biafra, in the 31 provinces and national provincial capital, laid to Eda, and led by the head of state BPG and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the State of Biafra, General Innocent N. Oji, GCSB, is not in any form of negotiations or agreement with anyone, any individual, or any entity for a ceasefire in the struggle for the total takeover of lands, territories, and resources for livelihood of the State of Biafra. The Biafran National Guard, the restored armed forces of the State of Biafra, comprising of the Biafran Army, Biafran Air Force, Biafran Navy, and Biafran Detective Force, still maintains the status quo as the military mandate to guarantee the legitimacy of the peoples and governments of the State of Biafra on our inalienable right to self-determination, national sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, by all available means, which includes armed defense. The Biafran National Guard, BNG, is characterized by professional and disciplined personnel in the discharge of their duties and services in the occupied and recovered territories that is being administered by the Biafran Provincial Government, BPG, Government of the State of Biafra. And that can be confirmed by the indigenes and citizens resident in those areas. If the reporter can leave the comfort of his bedroom and visit those territories, he will have no need to spread lies. The Biafran Provincial Government, BPG, Government of the State of Biafra, is not distracted in the mission for the formal discussion, recognition, and participation of the peoples and government of the State of Biafra as the 194th member state of the United Nations, UN, and the 56th nation of the African Union. The public should ignore the false information by the reporter of Newsband blog that we are advocating for 54th African member nation of the African Union. These are lies. The detective chief of the Biafran Detective Force is to further examine, investigate, and ensure appropriate measure on the defamatory publication in line with the jurisdiction of the Biafran National Legal Bond and statute of the Biafran Tribunal of Justice of the State of Biafra. The Biafran National Legal Bond, which is the Constitution, and the Biafran Tribunal of Justice, which is the Court of Law. It is important that such fake news reporter and their enterprise is made to face the legal consequences if found culpable of malicious spread of fake news. For verified information and facts, please always confirm from our official social media platforms and, of course, our official website www.stateofbiafra.org. This brings me to conclusion of today's broadcast of the Rising Sun News. Before I take the headlines again, attention, attention, attention. This is a special condolence to the families and friends of Honorable Chief Paul IGWE of the Biafran Elders of Thought, who left to be with his ancestors a fortnight ago. May his soul rest in power, and may Chukwu Okike Abiama give his family and friends the fortitude to bear the loss. The flag in every national secretariat will be flying at half-mast for a week in honor of Honorable Chief Paul IGWE of the Biafran Elders of Thought. Now, the headlines again before I go. Defunct ANAMBRA State Governor Professor CHUKWUMA SOLUDO cannot enforce peace by summary execution and violence against indigenous Biafra, declares Major CHUKWUDUM NWAFOR. Military-civil converge, a path to Biafran freedom. Equal rights to self-determination, national sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity for indigenous Biafran is existing and non-negotiable. Biafran National Guard, never cease fire nor lay down their arms. Continue to share in every social media platform. Thank you for joining me for the Rising Sun News. I'm your host, Pointer. Take care.